TG Geeks, episode 258, January 27th, 2020. It's a glad day in Toronto. Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery, sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre. You name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
And I'm Ben Raggington, also coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona.
And we're going to get right into the show.
Prepare for hyperdrive.
Meanwhile, in the Hall of Episodes, the Two Gay Geeks are discussing this.
Well, this time we've got MJ Lyons, who is an author, but he's coming back to tell us about Glad Day Bookshop in the city of Toronto and give us a little update on where he's at with his writing, etc., as well as all the things going on up there. We got our birthday shout-outs, featured podcast of the week, feedback, shout-outs. In our second segment, we're going to talk about a couple of interesting things, and then the weekly recap, as well as our regular shout-outs at the end of the show. And we're going to get right to it. And we welcome back to our show Mr. MJ Lyons, or Mikey, as we refer to him, or as his Twitter handle is Queer Mikey's, right?
Yeah, that's right. Hello. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah. He is the author of Murder at the World's Fair, which was an incredible book that we talked about. We talked with him about that. And he's here to kind of follow up on that, how the book did, and also to talk about another little thing that we'll get into. So welcome back to the show.
So happy to be back. And you also didn't mention that you gave me just the loveliest review that I can possibly imagine.
I'm glad you liked it.
I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it was just great. So for the people that did not listen or have not listened to, they'll probably go back and listen to the other interview now. But those that haven't listened to it and don't know who you are, give us a little bit of a background of who you are and how you kind of got into writing, and then we'll segue into the book portion.
Yeah, sure thing. So, Mikey, or MJ, I've been writing for pretty much my entire life, but sort of professionally writing for the past, almost a decade now. Sort of been all over the place in terms of my career. My background is in playwriting, and then I also did a journalism degree as well. So just sort of writing all over the place. For a period of time, I was doing freelancing for a lot of LGBTQ publications based out of Toronto, including a stint writing a column with a friend of mine on lesser-known LGBTQ history. So, my bag is sort of like science fiction, fantasy, history, and LGBTQ stuff. So that's where I'm sort of coming at writing from. And so a couple of years ago, so during that time I was working on Murder at the World's Fair, so my debut novel, which came out last June, and that was sort of a long-term project for me. And then more recently, a couple of years ago, I was hired at Glad Day Bookshop, which is the world's oldest surviving LGBTQ bookstore. It's been functioning in some capacity since 1970, based out of Toronto. And that sort of has eventually led to me becoming I started just as a sort of a bookstore associate part-time, but I sort of kept taking on responsibilities and eventually became Glad Day's bookstore manager, which is the incredibly absurd position that I find myself in now. So yeah, that's kind of, and like we launched Murder at the World's Fair in June at Glad Day. We did it. It was sort of a triple book launch with Renaissance Press, who is my just absolutely fantastic publisher. Actually, funny enough, we're recording this on November 30th. I wish it was June 30th. We're recording this on November 30th, and completely coincidentally, we're actually launching 3 more books from Renaissance Press at Glad Day tonight. So,
wow.
Yeah, they're pretty prolific. They're constantly putting out. Their mandate is diverse Canadian voices, so people of color, people with disabilities, LGBTQ people. They're just like the most incredible publishers I can possibly imagine, and it's been such a treat working with them. So yeah, it's kind of like it's like a web of like queer, nerdy, like sci-fi wonderfulness has been my life over the past few years.
Wow.
So.
We had interviewed somebody recently, and she said, "Yeah, I hung out with all the queerdos."
yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah, it's so wonderful actually when you realize that you've sort of like created this network of like of queer people, and like on a day-to-day basis, I probably like the minority of people that I speak to are like cisgender heterosexual people. So that's like a wonderful treat to me to live in that little bubble.
Yeah. Cool. So tell us how is Murder at the World's Fair doing? Is it selling off the shelves or where
what has the reception been for
what
the
has
book?
The reception been? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really incredible, like beyond anything I could possibly imagine, really. And I mean, this is my first, it's like my debut novel with a really small indie publisher based out of Ottawa, and they've only been operating since 2015, I believe, and what they've accomplished since then is just incredible. Just the amount of books that they've put out since then, and the amount of authors they've worked with. So just the fact that it's like a small operation, and I've mostly been handling like distribution and promotion myself with some help from the publisher, but it's incredible to me. Like, I think that as an author, you assume you're going to put stuff out, or maybe I should say as a pessimistic author, you're going to assume that you put stuff out in the world and it just sort of will sit on the shelf and maybe a few friends will buy it. And hey, that's great, right? Like, but it astounds me. And I mean, I can say specifically working at Glad Day, because and managing the bookstore side of things, I handle all of the like, book ordering, restocking, things like that. So I'll get like 10 or 15 copies of specifically Murder at the World's Fair in. I'll put it on the shelves in a couple different sections, and then like I'll have people in and I'll hand sell it like to friends, people I know, and people who are obligated to buy it, which I love. But
obligated to buy it, like, those friends.
Yeah, absolutely. But then I'll go away for the weekend and I'll come back. And I'll be like, oh, why is there no more on the shelf? And it's like, so it's been selling so steadily that I've had to do a bunch of restocks since the actual event. And that's partially because like it's super, super cool for both myself and for my staff to be able to say like, hey, like, if you're looking for like a good sci-fi book or a good young adult book, hey, this book on the shelf, it was actually written by somebody who works here. Like that's a huge selling point. And
right.
Like, I can't stress that enough. And that's why it just feels so lovely and organic, right? Because it's, like I'm literally hand selling it off into the exact people who I want reading it, which are like super cool, nerdy young people, super cool, nerdy people my age. So yeah, like it's just been it's felt so organic and so lovely, like, and then also just the response online of like complete and utter strangers who have absolutely no obligation to whatsoever saying like just incredibly nice things. And like I'm sort of the person who is obsessively checking my Goodreads author profile. I feel like we maybe all do, but
I don't know if we cross-posted that over on Goodreads or not. I'll have to check and see.
Yeah, don't worry, I'll call it in eventually. So, but no, it's just people again who have no obligation to like pick it up and read it and say nice things about it have just been like super lovely and supportive. So it's really been an incredible experience to publish my first book.
Well, we've pushed it, and we've been into a couple of bookstores that have a good LGBTQ selection, and said, you really need to get this book. It's a great book.
Oh my gosh. You two are the best.
So, I mean, it's, well, hey,
it's a good book.
It's a great book,
it's simple as that. I mean, what's there to, I mean, of course we're going to push a good book.
Yeah.
Well, you can't see it over the podcast, but I'm blushing right now. So.
Well, and we even put the extra copy that you had sent to us that you said to the lucky winner. We put that in a gift basket for the Red Dress Ball that was put on by, I think I told you, the Grand Canyon Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And
that makes me so happy because I told you over email, I think, that I used to be part of an aspirant house in Toronto.
Right.
It was like a previous iteration, but I was an aspirant sister. I love the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Just the fact that it's ended up in like something involved with them is just like so wonderful to me.
So the book is doing well, but you also are here to talk to us about, and you've already talked about Glad Day, but there's some really important stuff coming up with that. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so Glad Day has a really interesting and often intense history just in sort of the Canadian, both like literary and LGBTQ community landscape. So Glad Day Bookshop is the world's oldest surviving LGBTQ bookstore. It's been in operation in some form since 1970. And so that means that this coming year, Glad Day is actually celebrating our 50th anniversary, which is like just like incredible. And it's a real milestone. And I think that we call ourselves the world's oldest surviving LGBTQ bookstore, which sounds really cool. But I always say that's actually super sad because so many incredible stores around the world have closed. Like Oscar Wilde's in New York had that honor until it closed a few years ago, just because like rent had gone up so much and they're just sort of, it wasn't financially viable anymore.
Right.
And to that point, like Glad Day's, Glad Day's an independent business in an extremely expensive city that's also located in the heart of the downtown core in a storefront space, and so like we're very honest with the community about the fact that like to be an independent business in that location it's impossible. Like it's impossible to sustain ourselves, despite the fact that we're doing so much programming and we're just constantly filling the space with different events. Glad Day in its current manifestation is a bookstore, a cafe, a bar, a restaurant, and then it becomes a club on the weekends.
Oh my gosh.
So like I can't even begin to describe what a day-to-day at Glad Day looks like because every single day of the week is different. And it's also become a community hub. Like it's a place where people come just to come and like have a coffee and hang out with people. We have regulars who come in every single day where like, we know more about them than we know about like a lot of our family members,
right?
Which is intense.
All the details,
often too much. And also we have a lot of people who come to us as a resource center. We often find ourselves operating as like frontline workers, despite the fact that we have no training whatsoever. And like we have people who come to us in crisis, like people who are dealing with mental health issues, people who are dealing with like housing issues, like young people who have no idea where to go. And then we find ourselves doing those jobs. So like Glad Day as a project it's like, I don't think people realize, and I hope they do start to, how immense the project of Glad Day in its current form is. I'd also be happy to talk about like Glad Day has this like humongous history of like anti-censorship battles and like police raids as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
again, like it's a business that survived like basically the entire run of like queer liberation to this point. So it's a really incredible place, really historically charged, and it's a terrifying honor to like be in charge of the bookstore side of things.
Well, 1970 was a very different world.
Yeah.
Trust me, I know. I lived.
We were there.
I was there.
I mean, we lived through it.
I was 10.
I was not, but we
I know
don't
you're
really
a
have to talk
child.
about that. Yeah.
Compared to us, we're the old farts in the room. Anyway, so you got some anniversary planned at this point, and you're going to do some fundraising and some other activities and lots of other things. Can you talk about any of that, or that you know of? Or it's in the talking phase, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, the big push over the next little while is going to be, Glad Day has a nonprofit arm called Glad Day Lit. It's what we do a lot of our outreach and programming through in terms of Glad Day does an annual festival. It just happened a couple weekends ago called the Naked Heart LGBTQ Festival of Words. So we just had our 5th year, and it was like a lovely weekend. I was involved in a bunch of sci-fi programming. Surprise, surprise. And so beyond that, we want to start doing more sort of outreach, community support, but then also supporting our staff members who have like an emotionally laborious job. So, the big push over the next little while is going to be a fundraising campaign for Glad Day Lit for the nonprofit arm, and then moving into the new year to start celebrating the 50th anniversary. Obviously, we'll be doing a bunch of programming around Pride. We always do, but the big focus is just going to be on celebrating the space and the history of the place, like in the lead up to Pride Toronto. Glad Day's birth itself, it's really hard to sort of place it on a timeline because for years, so it was founded by an incredible sort of radical queer activist named Gerald Moldenhauer, who is like still alive and doing well. He retired a little more than a decade ago and moved to Morocco, where he now lives.
Wow.
He's a really incredible person, a really like wonderful mind. And he and I have sort of, as of late, been in contact a little more, just sort of having a correspondence about like our lives, our work, about Glad Day. So that's been a really amazing thing to tap into, because he despite him, because he was the one who sort of took Glad Day through some of its most like intense and challenging periods, like decades-long battles with censorship court cases, like decades of police like harassment and raiding. So that he lived through all of that, and he was the one who who helped Glad Day survive all of that, such that it has. And so like that's just sort of celebrating the history, I think, is going to be really important. I've got some things planned myself. Like I plan to do a lot of writing and to sort of get the word out there. And hopefully, like my really big push is just to let people know. I want to let people know what day-to-day Glad Day looks like, and just the intense things our staff are sort of go through. And I think it's important to celebrate both the history and then also what we do on a day-to-day. So yeah, it's like we are in the talking phases now, because Glad Day it's about like a dozen queer people who have their hands full on the day-to-day, let alone planning long-term. But we'll definitely be doing a lot of programming around Pride. And then I plan to be pretty ambitious in what we set out for our next year's Naked Heart Festival, which will happen in November, so later in the year. But yeah, the hope is that we can sort of tackle something big and ambitious, and we'll see how that goes as we get into the year. So,
right. Do you have any specific day in mind as the actual celebration, or are you still kind of planning around that?
Honestly, I think that like my idea for it is to do programming around Pride, like Pride Toronto. I think that kind of just makes the most sense. Right. It's also when like downtown, like Glad Day exists in its current form in the historically gay and lesbian village. So it's a Church and Wellesley community for people who are familiar with Toronto. We're literally right near the intersection of Church and Wellesley. So it's a really central and vibrant place to be. So, and during the Pride season, it is just flooded with people, millions of people coming from like out of town and Toronto's suburbs. So I think it really makes the most sense to do a celebration of Glad Day around that time. And what that will look like.
And when is Toronto Pride?
Toronto Pride is end of June. So,
end of June. Okay.
So yeah, it'll be during the summer.
So we do Pride way early in the year because it's too freaking hot in June.
We're like one of the first Pride festivals in the United States.
Yeah. So that sounds really absolutely incredible that a bookstore, any bookstore for that matter, has lasted for 50 years.
Yeah,
I think independent
though,
bookstores.
We're beginning to see a resurgence of that, luckily. Because with the advent of all these big book chain stores, a lot of the mom and pop stores kind of started to fall by the wayside, but we're starting to see them make a resurgence. So the fact that the Glad Day Bookstore was able to withstand that tumultuous corporate time and to come out on this other side might really be more than just beneficial in the long run, I would think.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said there. And like my one big pet peeve is I have people come in all the time, like just walking off the street and go, "Oh, Glad Day! I didn't even know you were still around anymore."
Ouch,
do people even buy books anymore?
Oh dear.
I always just like stop and like take a breath. But like the honest answer to that is we can't keep books on the shelf. Like Glad Day focuses a lot on sort of like identity in terms of its different sections. And so instead of having the typical like nonfiction, fiction sections in like a standard bookstore, we focus more. We have our new release section, which again, we can't keep in stock. Like it's just people are tearing books off the shelves. But then we have, like a trans and non-binary section. We have different sort of like it's sort of like people of color section. So we have like a Black narratives, like Latinx narratives, like Southeast Asian. So and then getting into like gay and lesbian sections in terms of like fiction and nonfiction. We have like our Indigenous and Two-Spirit section. And then our sort of Middle East and Muslim section. Those are the two that like, it's impossible. Like our Middle East section right now has literally 2 titles on the shelf. Wow. Because we fill it up and then they're gone. Like 2 weeks later, like we can't. The problem is more like keeping up with the demand. But then on the other side of that, I think Glad Day is also Glad Day again in its current manifestation is it's sort of like it owes itself to a literal community of people. So about I think 7 or 8 years ago now, so the current owner at the time, because it had been sold from Gerald Moldenhauer to a man named John Sides, who had run the business at its old location for decades. Gerald was retiring. He wanted to either close or sell the business. And so a group of people came together. They pooled their money together and they bought the business. So it's a group of owners. At the moment, I think it's 32 people who are like active owners who all own a piece of Glad Day and have a vested interest in keeping it alive. And beyond that, Glad Day's like its nonprofit arm has a board. So people who make decisions as a collective. And so like Glad Day really, I mean, there's the phrase, it takes a community. And with Glad Day, it literally takes a community.
Wow. So it's the queer consortium that's owning.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well put.
I like to call the managers at Glad Day like a queer cabal, because that's sort of how it feels. Like meeting in secret and making like evil, nefarious decisions to like indoctrinate youth and stuff like that.
Well, hey, I mean,
we're
always being accused of taking over the world. So I mean,
yeah.
There you
we
go.
might as well, right?
Yeah, so
exactly.
I mean, if we're going to be accused of it, then we might as well put on the airs and graces. You know,
we're going to spike that coffee with those queer genes.
Yeah.
Meet in hoods in the dark, which sounds like an entire other business.
Send off, launch my drones and put these chemtrails in the air.
Yeah.
Well, this has been tons of fun, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. So, for people out there, if they want to learn more about Glad Day Bookstore, where can they go?
Yeah, so the best places to do it. So our Facebook is very, very active. We're constantly posting things on there, and also on Twitter as well. I think those are the best two places. So on Facebook, we're just at Glad Day, or like www.facebook.com/Glad Day, all one word. On Twitter, we're GD Books. I think that's it. Let me just, I'm just on Twitter right now. Let me double check.
I just checked it. It is GD Books.
GD Books. Yeah, I tweet at the store all the time as the bookstore manager, so I should know that. So yeah, those are definitely the best two places. Again, like if you're based in and around the Greater Toronto area, you should follow Glad Day just to like keep on top of all of the different events that we're doing.
Yeah, and then there's gladdaybookshop.com.
Yep. Yeah, and that's actually going to be undergoing. It's going to be undergoing some changes just in terms of our online store and just in terms of like the layout of the store in general. Because Glad Day's evolved a lot over the past few years, like just in terms of like opening a restaurant and like being a bar on the weekends. And I think we also owe it to the community to have more of a presence in terms of like blogging and sort of supporting the arts and literature in like the Canadian queer community.
Right, and then there's gladdaylit.ca for
and that's our nonprofit arm. I believe there's also nakedheart.ca as well, which is the festival itself, where we keep it updated in the lead up to November every year.
Cool. And then if anybody wants to know about Mikey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so
You're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm super active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @queer_Mikey. So, the more the merrier on there. And then I do have a Facebook page that I should update more often called, it's facebook.com/MJ Lyons Writes. So those are definitely the best two places. I have a website as well. Again, I need to make it nicer and update it more, but it's also just mjlyonswrites.wordpress.com. I guess those are definitely the best few places.
And I should also add, because I do know there are some people that simply focus on Instagram, and Glad Day Bookshop does have an Instagram presence, and it is Glad Day Bookshop, all one word, so they can always go there too.
Our Instagram is adorable.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. It was so good to talk to you again, Mike.
I'm just so glad to be back, and we always have way too much to talk about.
I know.
I can't wait for the next one.
All right. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thanks, guys.
This is Hannibal Taboo, columnist for CBR, and you're listening to the Two Gay Geeks.
It's always good to talk to Mikey.
Yes.
And here's a few selected birthdays for January 27th, 2020 through February 2nd, 2020. January 27th, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. What do you say about Mozart? He's one of my favorite composers. He wrote everything from string quartets to operas to symphonies to a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Just a prolific... my gosh, he wrote so much in his relatively short career as a composer. He was a savant, really, if you look at his life, and started playing and performing when he was a very young man, and then died when he was too young, actually. Yes. And also on January 27th, we have Patton Oswalt, comedian, voiceover actor, done a number of things for Pixar, and he was Remy and Ratatouille, and it was just lots of voiceover stuff. Alan Cumming, actor, he was King James and the Doctor Who The Witchfinders.
That's right.
And among other things. And we have Charles Lutwidge Dawson, also known as Lewis Carroll. He was a writer. He wrote Alice in Wonderland, Jabberwocky, The Hunting of the Snark. He was a mathematician and an Anglican deacon, as well as a writer. A very interesting individual. Mikhail Baryshnikov. What do you say about Mikhail Baryshnikov?
Ballet
dancer extraordinaire. Howard McNear. He was an actor. He played Floyd the Barber on the Andy Griffith Show. That was his big claim to fame. And James Cromwell, Zefram Cochrane in Star Trek, among others. He's also George in the series 6 Feet Under. And he did a wonderful job of taking somebody from a very happy person to this total descent into mental illness.
Yes.
It was frightening to watch, but he was brilliant at it. Nick Mason.
Pink Floyd.
You got it. And Donna Reed. She was in It's a Wonderful Life and most primarily the Donna Reed Show, most people remember her for. And then we wind up on January 27th with good friend of ours, Dee Estelle. Happy birthday, Dee. January 28th, Alan Alda, actor, most famous for Hawkeye Pierce on MASH. Mm-hmm. And we have Elijah Wood, actor, most commonly known as Frodo.
Frodo.
Yep. But he's been an actor since he was a child.
And he's still acting.
And he's still acting.
Very busy doing a lot of
independent films.
Yes, a lot of independent projects.
Yep. And Jackson Pollock, painter and most noted for his abstract. His painting style was he used his body, movements to drip paints and throw paints and
throw up paints,
throw up paint and all kinds of things. So it's interesting. He was not really hailed as a painter until after his death.
Yeah, he was way before his time.
Yep. And then we have Auguste Piccard, who was a scientist. He was an aeronaut, built the first bathyscaphe for exploring the seafloor. He had a twin brother whose name was Jean-Felix, and it is said that Gene Roddenberry used their names as inspirations for Jean-Luc Picard.
Very well.
The whole family was a family of explorers and scientists. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. And then we end up with Kevin Batchelder. Happy birthday, Kevin. January 29th, Tom Selleck. What do you say? Actor, Magnum P.I.,
Magnum
current
P.I.
and Blue Bloods, I think.
I don't know.
It's
It's a police show. That's all I'm sure of.
And Oprah Winfrey, a true rags to riches story. She is a philanthropist, television, all kinds of things, writer. And Adam Lambert, singer, American Idol, singer with Queen.
Now he lead sings for Queen.
Yep. And somebody I didn't put on the list was W.C. Fields, comedian. January 30th, Christian Bale, actor, Batman.
No, that wasn't Christian. No,
Batman.
that was not. Yeah, but Christian Bale didn't play Batman.
Yeah, he's supposed to play Batman, or was. Anyway.
Was?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was ever supposed to play Batman.
Yeah, it was all rumored for a while.
Oh, I didn't know
among 75 other people. So
okay.
Anyway, and Phil Collins, singer, songwriter,
Renaissance man,
a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Gene Hackman, actor and fabulous comedic actor.
Yes.
My Lord!
I think most people remember him. If you followed his career during the 70s, it was really sort of an action kind of character, but it was. I think it was like towards the last part of the 70s, start going to the 80s, and then he started to kind of veer into more light stuff. But what he did with the Birdcage is hilarious.
Oh my gosh, his comic timing was just brilliant. The favorite line is, "I feel like I'm insane."
Yes.
And then Barbara Tuchman, historian. She wrote A Distant Mirror, The Calamitous 14th Century. She actually, from that book, she developed what is commonly referred to as Tuchman's Law now. And that is, the more something is reported, the more extreme it seems. Mm-hmm. So, and we've seen that in modern times with the San Francisco earthquake and various others. And maybe not so much today, because we're in a 24-hour news cycle and everybody has access to everything.
Right.
But when you have limited media and the more it gets reported on, the more extreme it sounds. And then we have on January 30th, a good friend of ours, Lucas Hines, James Laird, and Hakeem Brahimi. January 31st, Portia de Rossi, actress, model, Mrs. Ellen DeGeneres. Mm-hmm. And then we have Jackie Robinson, baseball player of color. He was the first African American to play in the major leagues starting in 1947. He was later inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1962. Ernie Banks, another baseball player who is a man of color. He's spent his entire career with the Cubs, Chicago Cubs.
Well, imagine that.
Yeah, 20 some odd years. And then we have Nolan Ryan, baseball player, once clocked as the fastest ball in the world, 100.9 miles an hour. And Connie Booth, actress, Monty Python, Fawlty Towers. She did Fawlty Towers when she was married to John Cleese.
I'd forgotten she did Python, but you're right.
Yeah. And Justin Timberlake, singer, songwriter, what do you say?
Dancer, actor.
Dancer, actor, yep. He was in a boy band and all of that. And that's where he got his start. Philip Glass, composer, wrote Powakatsi, Koyaanisqatsi, a number of other things. 3 operas, his triptych of operas about famous people. First one was Einstein on the Beach, and then Satyagraha and Akhenaten, which we just saw recently from the Met. Oh my God.
Loved it.
It was just brilliant. If you have a chance to see it on a replay or something, please do. I think Carol Channing, a singer, actress, played Dolly in Hello, Dolly for
a number of times.
75 years or whatever it was. And then Zane Grey, a novelist, whose novel Riders of the Purple Sage is now an opera by Arizona Opera that was commissioned by Arizona Opera that will play this spring. And then we have a good friend of ours, Trevor Barton, who you heard from a couple of weeks ago. February 1st, Clark Gable, actor, heartthrob, I guess, in his day.
In his day.
Yep. Michael C. Hall, who was in 6 Feet Under and Dexter, was a wonderful actor. Frederick Douglass, he was a slave and learned to read and write from the wife of a slave owner, which was a crime in its day.
Yes.
And he taught others to read and write, and then escaped and became an abolitionist, campaigned for blacks and women's rights towards the end of his life. And then we have Bibi Besh, actress, Wrath of Khan.
Dr. Carol Marcus.
Exactly. And then we have Bill Mumy.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Actor. Yes. Where's my sound? Where's my sound?
Oh, you got music playing.
Oh, gosh. Where is it?
Oh, it's probably
It's
misplaced.
gone. Oh, well. I have my Danger, Will Robinson sound. Anyway. Renata Tebaldi, a famous opera singer. She was quite the hit in the 60s and 70s and did quite a few operas at the Met.
I think there was this unintended feud that was set up between her and Callis.
Yeah, it was a...
and it really wasn't anything personal between the two of them.
It was... No.
It was done by fans, I think.
Yep. And then we have a good friend of ours, Brian Weber, a.k.a. R. Cole, and Amy McAdams and John De Los Santos, who is the librettist for The Copper Queen, which is going to premiere next season at Arizona Opera. Clint Borzoni's work. And then February 2nd, we have Farrah Fawcett, actress, model.
Charlie's Angel.
Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old man of color, shot dead by a rent-a-cop for being black. That was a travesty of justice. Michael T. Weiss, actor, he was in The Pretender and
I remember him from Jeffrey, and I don't know what he's doing now. I really haven't followed up on him. I know that he came out.
Yeah,
he did come out as gay, and he's in a long-term relationship, but I don't know what he's doing these days.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. And then we have Brent Spiner. Amazing. We just saw Brent
Spiner.
Yeah. As Data, most notably known for Data in Star Trek Next Generation. And then we have Ina Garten. She's a celebrity chef known as the Barefoot Contessa. She's known for saying, well, you should really use this butter from this specific farm in Vermont, but store-bought is
Store-bought is okay.
Yes. Or something, backhanded compliment like that. Then we have Tony Jay, voice actor, voiceover actor.
Very recognizable voice.
Yes, he was Frollo in Beauty and the Beast. Not Beauty and the Beast.
No, it was Hunchback of Notre Dame, but he played sort of a... but he wasn't Beauty and the Beast. He, dealt with the insane asylum.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, forgot about that. And then we have Yasha Heifetz, who was a violinist, an educator. Many consider him the greatest violinist of the 20th century. Fritz Kreisler said on Heifetz's debut at Carnegie Hall, he said, "We might as well take our fiddles and break them over our knees." He actually, when he became an educator, he was a champion for socio-political causes. He advocated for the 9/11 or 911 emergency system and campaigned against pollution. He changed his 1962 or 67 Renault into an electric car. So he was quite the individual. And then Fritz Kreisler, born on the same day. Different years, obviously. He was a noted violinist, had a characteristic sound that when you heard it, you knew it was Fritz Kreisler playing.
Oh.
It was a wonderful, both of them are wonderful violinists. And then we have Jussi Björling, who was an operatic tenor, sang for years at the Met. And one of his first recordings was in a series with Robert Merrill, where they sang the duet Au fond de temps plaisant from Bizet's Pearl Fishers. Yeah, so then we also have a good friend of ours, Gary Lindros, and classmate Teresa Davis, and very close friend of ours, Lenore Swisslow. Happy birthday, Lenore. And that's it for the birthdays this time.
It's sci-fi for your Wi-Fi.
Go give a listen to our friends over at Krypton Radio. It's not a podcast. It is a 24-hour geeky internet radio station managed by Gene Turnbow.
I'm Daniel Radcliffe, and I believe that reaching out for help is the bravest thing a person can do. If you are struggling and need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. It's free and confidential, and trained counselors are there to listen 24/7 without judgment. To learn more about the Trevor Project's life-saving work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning young people, go to thetrevorproject.org.
We want to give a little shout out to our niece, Summer Sellers. She has a new YouTube channel that she is doing, sharing her own brand of wisdom, shall we say, whether it is girly pink stuff or drinking tea to hand embroidery and about her faith. Summer has embarked on this journey of creativity, sharing her life experiences. Go to YouTube and check out Summer Sellers and subscribe to her YouTube channel.
Got a
little bit of feedback.
Got a couple of bits of feedback I want to hit on. First, this is regarding Aaron's Arcade Reviews. Quince, the definitive bilingual edition. We got this from Barbara Dillon, and actually she was so moved by what Aaron had to say that she actually quoted her. The most beautiful irony in the whole of the piece is that our hero Lupe longs to see young brown faces in the role of the superhero for a change, that very thing we need to see as readers. She becomes that for herself. She becomes that for us. She teaches us that the superhero is truly in any of us, and her story can help us save ourselves. That is a wonderful quote.
Yes,
from Aaron. It's beautiful. And for anybody who wonders, the definitive bilingual edition of Quince is available now for pre-order from Fanbase Press, or at least it was at the time this was submitted. It might be available now.
It still is. In fact, they had the release party yesterday.
Aha, there we go.
So,
and then moving on, regarding short film creation now online, got a comment from Ruggero Dalla Santa. He says, a big thank you to TG Squared Studios for sharing our article about the release of Creation. And then this will be the last article. This is regarding Jeannie's Yaps, a positive review of Cats. Oh, dear. Got a comment from Hamish Downey. I watched this with my parents as we did the live show over 30 years ago. I'm sure Dad preferred not being manhandled by a cat this time. They used to do that in the Broadway show. I thought it was fine, and it didn't deserve the hate it's getting. And then got a comment from Jen Bird. She says, thank you for the fantastic review. You've written out pretty much what I've been thinking since seeing the movie. I agree that it isn't for everyone, but the piling on by other critics and people who haven't even seen the movie is so ridiculously over the top. I loved every second of the movie and will be buying the DVD when it comes out. And that is our feedback for this week.
You don't want to do the last one?
Now move on.
Okay. Well, you can leave feedback for us if you wish. You can comment on our Facebook page or on each article or episode at tggeeks.com. You can also comment on our Twitter and Instagram pages. We want to hear from you, and if you also want to leave us a voicemail message, you can do that. We'll play it on air. You can call 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. And as always, please play nice. Well, everybody knows that we are huge supporters of independent creators, whether they are filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, or others. If you see independent creators, wherever they are, it's a book fair or a con or whatever, please go and chat them up. They love to chat with their fans. If you want to see something that you like, please buy it. Please have cash for them. Please consider supporting independent creators. The Joshua Tree Feeding Program is a 501c3 nonprofit food pantry for the HIV/AIDS community of Maricopa and Pinal counties. They set their space up like a store so that the clients can pick and choose the food that they prefer, so it empowers the clients and no food is wasted. They're an all-volunteer organization and could certainly use the help. Please consider supporting Joshua Tree either with a single or a monthly recurring gift. Go to jtfp.org. If you are trans or are questioning your gender identity, and if you are in crisis or are feeling isolated and need someone to talk to, or you know of someone in a similar situation, there is a special hotline just for you. The hotline is provided by translifeline.org and staffed by trained counselors who are transgender themselves. The hotline in the U.S. is 877-565-8860. In Canada, it is 877-330-6366. Or you can go to translifeline.org to learn about the important work they are doing. Please reach out for help. You are not alone.
Yeah, baby. They're like two gay geeks. They're together, you know. They're two gay guys and they're geeks. Is that okay?
Well, I got a couple of things, but I'm looking at the script that we have, and we were going to talk about Picard, and maybe we still will, but yeah. I really think we need to go to the PSA because
go ahead.
I really think so because this was really important on such an enormously personal level, and I really feel that maybe there's something important for you to share on that.
We can talk about Picard, but I just want to say that it's really important for you to consider your heart and heart health, because I wound up in the hospital with atrial fibrillation. If you experience an elevated heart rate or you feel like your heart has skipped a beat, and that happens more than once or twice in a month period or a couple of month period, please go to the doctor and have it checked out. Atrial fibrillation is nothing to play with. It can cause a stroke. It can kill you. Mm-hmm. Please do something about it. And they literally had to shock my heart.
They did.
To bring it back into the proper rhythm.
But one of the things that also helped is, and it's interesting timing, because I saw an article just a few days prior to your stay in the hospital of a gentleman saying that his Apple Watch saved his life.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. Is my heart rate was elevated, and I would check it, and it would give me a heart rate over 120 for a couple of days in a row, and then about the second day, after the first day that I was experiencing that in the evening, it started giving me warnings about atrial fibrillation. And then that's when I said, we probably need to go to the ER. And they gave me some medication to slow my heart down and then kept me in observation. And then they did a procedure and then they shocked me. And everything is fine now. They gave me some new medications. So it's a lifelong thing to regulate my heart. But if you have anything like that, any indication, palpitations, or, it feels like your heart skips a beat or a couple of beats or whatnot like that, please go have it checked out. Maybe, unless it's something that your heart rate is elevated at the time, you may want to just see your doctor, your regular physician, and tell them about it. But, then they can do an EKG and tell whether that's, or do a referral out to a cardiologist. So please consider your heart and heart health. So now we can talk about Picard. Yeah, we got time.
Okay. Well, we saw the first episode.
Yep. I liked it a lot.
I loved it.
I thought the music was brilliant. And especially after we watched the post.
Yes,
thing about
was it Ready Room is what it's called, I think.
With Will Wheaton.
Yes.
And then they did a little spotlight on how the composer came up with the music. And he is obviously a Star Trek fan.
He approached the music very intelligently, which I was very impressed with. And we even actually got to see a clip from an upcoming episode. And the way he was able to marry the original series theme with the Next Gen theme it really moved me deeply. And then he talked about how he wanted to use the very same kind of flute that Picard used in the episode Inner Light, but he couldn't, he says, but it doesn't exist. So they used a piccolo at one point. But still, it shows a very intelligent approach to this episode. And it's not just the composer, it's the producer, the director for the first episode. I mean, they were so smart.
Yeah, and they're all Star Trek fans. I mean, truly Star Trek fans.
They really
understand it.
And I think the big takeaway that I've got is, I remember when we were watching the first season of Discovery, and I kept making this list that just kept growing and growing. Everything that they were doing wrong. And as I was watching Picard, all I could do was make this list saying everything they were doing right.
It was, yeah.
I could not pick apart this thing at all. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it to no end. And it fits the entire overall canon, even a bit of the J.J. Abrams first movie. Yep. It touches into that, and it all fits seamlessly. I loved it. It was wonderful. I cannot wait to see where this series is going to go.
Absolutely. Well,
I didn't mean
to do that. I probably should have played that before I did my PSA.
Maybe. Anyway, this is our weekly review, and everything that we got in here, or I'm about to mention, this is things that we ran this past week at our website at tggeeks.com, and the links for each of these articles will be in the show notes for tggeeks.com, as well as, I'm assuming, a link for Summer's YouTube channel.
Yes.
Okay, so starting with Sunday, January 19th, Dr. Zombie Monster Family Physician number 84. On Monday the 20th, TG Geeks Webcast episode number 257. On Tuesday the 21st, CBC Dramatic Digital series The 410 heads to Slamdance for international premiere. On Wednesday, Big Fur screening at Slamdance Festival. On Thursday the 23rd, Ben's Breakdown. As films go, For the Love of Spock, it's a documentary, is more than simply logical. On Friday the 24th, this is from Hamish Downey, 5 Questions with Claire of El Japan, which is a Japanese web series. And then on Saturday the 25th, Sesame Street, February episodes on HBO.
I'm looking forward to There's a New Count in Town.
Okay.
With the Count.
Okay.
You can find all these things at tggeeks.com, as well as entries on our Facebook page. Please visit and comment.
Have some shout-outs that we need to give. First to the Arkle Times Post-Dispatch News for republishing our content on a semi-regular basis. It is put out by the human Arkle, Brian Weber, and you can find the Post-Dispatch news by finding him on Twitter. Search Arkle, at ARKLE, and he is also on YouTube. It is Arkle Studios, youtube.com/Arkle Studios, all one word. He wrapped up season 3 of his Shameless Cash Grab, and Brian is very busy currently playing Star Trek Online.
I think he's getting ready to start his new Shameless Cash Grab. I think
season
I saw
4 should be
but I
coming
forgot to
pretty soon.
look before we did this episode. So
Yeah, well, he'll probably let us know when he's getting ready to start.
Of course.
He'll make a comment on this episode. Yes, season 4 is coming, or he'll give us a date or something like that. And then we must give some shout-outs to a couple of Facebook groups for allowing us to post our episodes and relevant articles on their pages. First, Two Gay Geeks After Hours. When I asked if we could share our content there, they said, yes, please share away. Their URL is facebook.com/group/Gay Geeks After Hours. That's all one word. And then to The Gay Geek for also allowing us to share our lovely stuff on their page. Their URL is facebook.com/groups/The Gay Geek. And as always, we must give special thanks to their moderator, Jeremiah Reeves.
And lastly, we can be found on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, as well as where other fine podcasts can be found. Also, check us out on Krypton Radio at 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. Pacific Time on Tuesdays, and listen to their other content, their 24-hour geeky internet radio station. Please rate us and review us on iTunes. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can listen to us and surf the internet on your laptop or whatever, or even on your
mobile device.
So check us out. Okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this webcast episode. We will have several links on the page of things that we talked about. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or our website, tggeeks.com, or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I am Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. Please be kind to yourself and those around you. Peace.
Cheers.